The arrival of the new pope was not the conclusion of a prophecy, it was its ignition. As he ascends the throne of Peter, subtle changes ripple through the foundations of the church. But in the background, an ancient vision reawakens. The Lion of Pope Leo XII stands once more at the gates, not to guard the truth, but to mark its departure. Is the Vatican becoming the epicenter of a spiritual counterfeit? And is the new papacy the hidden engine of a great apostasy foretold by saints and seers? The conclave came and went, as it always does, cloaked in the ceremonial gravity of incense and Latin hymns, white smoke and solemn vows. But those who had watched closely, not the crowds in St. Peter's Square, but the ones who observed from behind tinted glass, secure rooms and undisclosed channels, knew that something was different. The man who emerged on the balcony bore the weight of more than just the fisherman's ring. His selection was not merely an answer to prayer, but a culmination of calculations, alignments, and ancient blueprints. As his name echoed through the plaza, some felt a stirring deep within, as if an old and dangerous clock had resumed its ticking. He is being called the Shepherd of Renewal, the Global Pope, the Bridge. But to others, those who remember the darker stories of Leo XII, those who speak in whispers of the Malachi prophecies and the hidden rites of enthronement, he is something else entirely. A seal has been broken, they say. A gate has been opened, and the man who now walks the halls of the apostolic palace is not merely a pontiff, but a pivot, the final turning of the key toward an age foreseen and long feared. Some point to the way his election was framed. A pope of compassion, of universal dignity, of openness, a man with no enemies who speaks every tongue, bows to every god, and smiles with the serenity of someone who knows there will be no resistance. But it is that very serenity that unsettles. The last few popes wrestled with theology, with scandal, with identity. This one glides. He does not stand in the tradition of Peter so much as float above it, and this, many argue, is by design. The architects of the new era, secular and ecclesial, understand that the time for direct confrontation with religion has passed. The future lies not in destroying faith, but in transfiguring it, making it soft, malleable, interchangeable, a tool for global cohesion, emptied of its edge, stripped of its absolutes. Under this vision, the papacy itself becomes less of a spiritual authority and more of a symbolic unifier, a figurehead for a planetary ethic rooted not in revelation but in consensus. And here lies the fulfillment, or perhaps the inversion, of Pope Leo XII's deepest fears. He saw a church surrounded by wolves, besieged from without, but what he could only glimpse in fragments was the plan to tame the church from within, to lull it into comfort, to redefine its identity so thoroughly that even the faithful would not notice the shift. The devil's century may have ended in calendar years, but its spiritual momentum continues. And now, the man who walks in Peter's shoes may carry not the keys of heaven, but the charter of a new world religion. His speeches are crafted with precision. He speaks of love, but never judgment, of justice, but never sin. He quotes poets, scientists, and spiritual leaders of every tradition, but the name of Christ is often absent, or presented as one voice among many. In private audiences, he meets with technocrats and defense contractors, with cryptocurrency leaders and surveillance developers, all under the banner of human dignity. The Vatican, once a fortress of resistance to the spirit of the age, now leads the parade. There are rumors, always rumors, of a sealed directive signed in the early days of his papacy, a document that outlines the integration of religious teaching with global policy on climate, equity, and digital identity. A document co-authored not by theologians, but by strategists from Silicon Valley and Tel Aviv. It is said to outline a spiritual framework for planetary citizenship, and it is said to include, in its final clause, a commitment to re-evaluating eschatological narratives, specifically those regarding the return of Christ. That last detail has shaken even some of his supporters. To re-evaluate the second coming? To suggest that perhaps the return of the Messiah should be interpreted metaphorically, or as an evolving human potential. These are ideas that align neatly with certain strains of esoteric Judaism, Gnostic Christianity, and transhumanist philosophy. But they sit uneasily beside the gospel. And this, perhaps, is the point. The transformation must be complete. No cracks can remain in the foundation if the new temple is to stand. And here the name Leo reemerges, not as a footnote, but as a prophecy. For buried in the margins of his papal records, encoded in the Latin of forgotten homilies, some claim to have found a hidden message, not a code in the modern sense, but a pattern, a repeated image of the lion at the threshold, a reference to both his name and to the spiritual figure who guards the entrance to a new era. In one vision, reportedly recorded by a monk close to Leo, the lion does not guard the church, it devours it. not in malice, but in hunger. Hunger for transcendence. Hunger for man to ascend by his own will, not by grace. This is what the new pope embodies for some. Not the fall of the church, but its consumption by a world that no longer needs it as gatekeeper, only as mascot. And this shift is not limited to Rome. Across denominations, religions, and philosophies, the same script unfolds. Doctrine gives way to dialogue. Mystery yields to management. Revelation is repackaged as mindfulness. But the Vatican remains central because of its symbolism. It is the last throne, the last monarchy cloaked in spiritual legitimacy. To seize it is to declare victory over an age. And so, in this moment, the papacy becomes a tool, not of God perhaps, but of history's long experiment with spiritual inversion. A way to make obedience look like enlightenment, to make compromise feel like courage. And yet, a resistance stirs, not loud, not organized, but real. There are priests who speak in hushed tones of the deception. There are lay people who cling to the old prayers, to the Latin Mass, to the words of Christ as unyielding truth. There are bishops, even within the Vatican, who know what has been unleashed and who wait for a sign. Some say there is a secret conclave, a parallel circle of elders, not aligned with politics, who preserve the true line of apostolic succession in hidden places, waiting for the counterfeit throne to collapse. They speak of a time soon coming, when the false unity will fracture, when the smiling deception will be unmasked, when the true church, bloodied but unbroken, will rise from the margins. They believe Pope Leo XII foresaw this, not just the deception but the deliverance, that his vision was not only of Satan's century, but of its end, and that the lion devouring the church will be rebuked, not by might but by truth. Until then, the man in white continues his reign, beloved by the world, acclaimed by the media, toasted in global forums and praised in tech conferences. He speaks of evolution, ecology, and equity. He smiles with the peace of one who knows he has already won. But in the catacombs of faith, a remnant remembers, a remnant watches, a remnant waits. Because they know that beneath the marble and gold, beneath the diplomatic niceties and photo ops, something ancient stirs. A war older than Rome, deeper than dogma, and closer now than ever. And in this war, the papacy is not a prize, it is a battleground. One man wears the robes, but another may still hold the keys.